This is Live from the Table, the official podcast of the world-famous Comedy Cellar, coming at you on Sirius XM 99 Raw Dog. And, oh, thank you, Periel, for that laughter. And wherever podcasts are available, this is Dan Naturman. I'm with Noam Dworman. He's the owner of the ever-expanding Comedy Cellar, now with a new room expected in 2 more years or so on 6th Avenue at the former McDonald's. And we have Periel with us. She's the producer. Some call her the producer. Some call her just the
interloper,
the booker, and on-air personality. And also Nicole Lyons behind the scenes with sound. How is everybody today? We're waiting for Zach Zimmerman. Did you give me a bio for Zach, Periel?
I didn't, but I can.
Well, Zach Zimmerman, he can explain why he's here. He wrote a book about growing up religious Christian, I believe. So it's good to have a little bit of non-Jewish energy on the podcast.
Zimmerman's like German, not Jewish?
Yes. You recall the Zimmerman telegram from World War I? Maybe you don't.
World War I?
Yeah, there was something like the Germans tried to promise the Mexicans that they could have the United States if they... Something weird like that. But anyway, it had nothing... But the Zimmerman was not Jewish in the Zimmerman telegram.
And there's another comedian, Zimmerman is not Jewish.
There's one that is. But in any case... Noam, I have a couple of announcements to make. Number one, I started drinking coffee because I've heard that it has great benefits, not just mental health, but physical health. It's good for Alzheimer's. It's good for certain cancers, that's apparently, and for heart functioning, cardiac health. But that's what I've read.
I didn't know any of that.
4 cups maximum. I only drink 1 because I'm new to the whole game. But it has been a welcome addition to my life.
Now, what if it's decaf?
Well, no, decaf doesn't have those benefits.
So caffeine has the benefits?
Caffeine, and
Can
there's
you get
some
caffeine in other sources?
Yeah, but there's some other things in coffee too. But the caffeine is one of the main things, and then there's some other elements and other.
So it's like a superfood. It has that.
It does. Well, that's what I've read.
How do you
should have blueberry coffee. Really, it's all you need.
Well, I have been drinking it iced coffee because it's summertime, and oftentimes I'll drink a mocha because there's no better flavor that I've.
And dark chocolate is good for you, too.
Dark chocolate is good for you as well. They say 70% cocoa or more.
Are you making this at home, or are you going?
I'm just going. There's a Kosar's Bagel right near me. I believe they have a few locations in New York. It's excellent, and their coffee is excellent. I don't like Starbucks. It tastes like it's burnt.
Starbucks is disgusting. That's not even coffee.
Whoa.
But wait a second. Mocha isn't that all sugar?
Well, I don't exactly know. It's dark chocolate, I think. It's probably not as healthy.
Do you put sugar
mocha.
in it?
I don't.
The mocha has sugar in it.
No, mocha has sugar.
Is it mocha just the coffee with
the chocolate? But the chocolate has sugar.
But dark chocolate doesn't have a lot of sugar. That's why it's bitter.
It's not dark chocolate. It's like the stuff that we make bennies like.
No, that's hot. That's not dark. That's not.
Well, I don't know what they put in there.
That's what they put in when you go.
Calm down.
Well, maybe I'll buy some dark chocolate, some special Lindt dark chocolate sauce.
It won't be.
And I know what's in it, and I can put it in my.
Anyway, you can have a little sugar. It won't kill you, for God's sake.
It's bad for you.
Well, one has to balance out the effects of the positive effects of the coffee.
Dan cut out sugar.
I didn't cut out sugar. Who told you I cut out sugar?
You told me you
No,
stopped drinking that ginger beer.
Cut down on sugar.
Okay.
Cut down on sugar.
Dan's thin. He doesn't have to worry about sugar.
Well, sugar's bad for other things. Inflammation leads to all sorts of things. Psoriasis, which I have, very mild, but I can't seem to get rid of it.
It could pivot and get
And
worse.
also, the Alzheimer, once again, they say is...
You said it already. I hope you remember.
I remembered, as I said. Alzheimer, sugar's bad in terms of... Because inflammation...
I should have hit that joke differently. I should have acted like Alzheimer's.
Yeah. But that's the esprit de l'escalier. Right? That's your favorite expression. My other announcement is I've started for the 3rd time trying to read Crime and Punishment. I think I'm going to make it this time. Once I tried in high school, and that wasn't going to happen because high schoolers shouldn't be reading that book. It's much too sophisticated for them. And I don't know why, as Noam and I were saying prior to the podcast, they make high school students read shit that they're not going to enjoy, and it's going to be a chore, and they probably won't fully appreciate.
Yeah, the high school curriculum for literature is above the heads of where I was in high school, and I wasn't a dope. I read some Hemingway not that long ago, and I just couldn't believe I had been expected to understand this in high school. I just couldn't believe.
What value is there really in reading? I mean, we take it for granted that reading enriches you intellectually, but is that really true?
I think so.
You know, to read, well,
Well, I don't know about for girls.
Oh, really?
But no, I'll say this. But like my son Manny, who's 10, has been reading Philip K. Dick
oh, the sci-fi.
short stories, and we read out loud Nightfall, which is Isaac Asimov's short story, and these are quite literary and quite good, but he's enthralled by the stories. There's some symbolism in them, but you okay, Dan? But not a lot.
Water went down.
Now, I don't know if girls take the science fiction the same as boys, but
I don't think generally they do. That's like basically, you know, it's like for them, it's like heavy metal music. You know? It's mostly a guy thing.
But my only point is that there is literature out there which is quite good, which young kids will respond to. And
but will it
the sun
enrich
also,
them?
The Sun Also Rises. By the way, Of Mice and Men, I thought I enjoyed it.
They'll enjoy it, but will it enrich them? Like what is?
To Kill a Mockingbird was good. We like that.
But is this?
Can't read that anymore.
Even if a kid enjoys these books, does it make them smarter? Does it enrich them in any way? How is reading? Why is reading even something that we make kids do? Is it really?
Yeah.
Does it really make you smarter?
Yeah, I don't know if it makes you smarter, but I think
You've read a lot.
I think that I'm going to ignore Noam. I think that if you can give a child the gift of loving to read, it is incredibly it's something that continues on your whole life. To get lost in a book, I mean, what's more amazing than that? I think it's good for their imagination. I think it's good I don't know. I just think it makes you think more critically. I think it gives you time to figure things out, and you learn things like suspense and story and narrative. I don't know.
Well, that's good if you want to be a writer.
Well, even if you don't want it, doesn't it give you a better understand? It creates empathy and all sorts.
Well, there are books, of course, that teach history, like All Quiet on the Western Front. Even though it's fiction, it teaches you a lot about the First World War, so I could see why that would be of value to a student. Just reading in general, I don't know.
I mean just reading in general.
Well, okay.
I think.
Yeah, Noam has something to say.
No, I don't mean to interrupt you, Periel. Go ahead.
Oh, please.
Well, no, we said what we need to say.
So, just in no particular order. First of all, writing is an important skill, and reading is. The more you read, I think the more likely you are to be able to write well.
That's for sure true.
Okay.
I think that good literature, enriches your way of looking at the world. It causes you to think about things. It causes you to view, by viewing a story and the conflict that characters have, you begin to think about, like, for instance, The Scarlet Letter, which I never read, but I know a lot of people who had read it had a lot to say about what happened with Louis C.K. So there's this, and then if you have a curious mind, as you read various stories that have different settings and different times and places, you
learn about those times.
Learn about the world. I mean, you can make the argument: what does it all matter? We're all going to die anyway.
Well.
You can just sit in your room and play video games.
Curiosity.
And you know what? There is something to that for certain people who are not interested in that. You're right. Like, why do we force them to do it?
Well, I do think.
I know some smart people who are not interested in reading.
Most smart people are interested in reading. I think that
I don't know
the fostering of a curiosity is a good one. Like, that's true, to be curious about other people.
Well, how about a good documentary? That obviously carries value.
Yeah,
too.
sure. It's not the same thing as reading, though. There's something about reading that is singular and important. I think it teaches so many skills.
Well,
is that supposed to be funny, or
it does, I suppose, enrich your vocabulary, which is something I never cared about. But Noam seems like, for some reason, Noam is like interested in having a vocabulary.
Well, do you know how much fun I have pointing out when Periel uses wrong words incorrectly?
Oh, nothing gives you more pleasure.
And all the reading I've done makes that worthwhile. Like to think that I wouldn't know how to use certain words that she doesn't know how to use
Well,
it.
you know,
What about
I have a normal adult vocabulary, and
no,
I
that's
feel
not
no need.
true. That's not true. Your vocabulary is so much more sophisticated than the average person.
Well, whatever my vocabulary
You're
is,
much more perspicacious.
I
than you let on.
I feel no need to. The last thing in the world I feel a need of is learning more vocabulary.
Okay, Cormac McCarthy died yesterday.
That's correct.
Okay.
Now, I had just happened to be reading.
That all the pretty horses.
Yeah, I read All the Pretty Horses. I read Stella Maris, and I read The Passenger, and I'm reading
Wow.
Blood Meridian.
Well, you really read a lot of his books.
And I just got into him over the last few months. I didn't even know he existed, which apparently is crazy because he's very famous. But I had no idea he existed.
Okay.
And
Yeah, he is. I mean, I've heard of him. He's famous. Yeah.
talk about a vocabulary. I cannot get through and I'm not being hyperbolic.
Are you
know
being
what that means?
glib?
It's like when you inject somebody. I'm not being hyperbolic. I cannot get through a paragraph, or maybe 3 paragraphs, without having to look up a word that he uses. And every word he uses, I want to say, oh, why'd you use this word? It's the perfect word.
Right.
Well,
You
it's
know,
not the perfect word if you got to look it up and
Well-
ruin the rhythm of the reading.
It does. Well, fair. You could say that. I get that. But I enjoy it because I'm learning. Not that they stay with me anymore as I get older, but you know, ostensibly I'm learning these very, very precise words for many things in the world that I didn't know had precise words for them. You know, and I enjoy that,
Which is
And-
fine, except when you use it in a conversation and no one understands it, and they think you're being, kind of arrogant,
Well,
boastful.
Knowledge is its own reward.
Okay, fair.
Knowledge is power.
Yes. Anyway, so what words have you learned?
I can't remember. I can.
You
I
know,
can't remember. It's amazing.
Like the frizza, is that what the hammer on the gun that you pull is. I can, I'll make a list of them for next week because on my Kindle.
Well, that's like a technical term that a
Yeah,
gun,
there are a
that,
lot
a
of
gun that
technical
any
terms.
gun person would know. I
yeah,
suppose.
there's a lot of words. On my Kindle.
Yeah, you can-
It
can look it up.
It stores every word that you've looked
Oh
up.
wow, that's cool.
So I will bring in the list of words and I'll test
That's
everybody on the
really
words I
cool.
didn't know.
I love that. Dan, I'm surprised a little bit because you've written a book.
Correct. I didn't say reading isn't fun. I said, why is it a subject
No,
in school?
but and I think that you probably would also say that you're particular about the words that you used in the book. I mean, it's and
Yeah, but,
also on stage, right? Like
Well,
there.
I use words that I hope people will understand. I don't go out of my way to use a word that most people don't know. And furthermore, usually you can use a couple of words and get the same point across. I mean, if you really need to make a precise point, I don't know that you're missing anything by not having a vocabulary like William F. Buckley Jr.
Well, perhaps.
Who-
Speaking
and,
of,
he usually, I mean, he would use words. It was kind of like his shtick, so it was kind of funny. Buckley. I know him. You're
I have my Kindle open. I'm trying to see. There was a word that I read yesterday in this book about Israel that I felt I should have known. I'd heard it before, but I couldn't remember it. And if I could get it, maybe when Periel's talking, I'll look at it. I'll try to find it. But so what else? When's Zach Zimmerman coming?
he'll be here shortly.
what time is it?
In the meantime, Noam, any feedback on the new website? Are people loving it or nobody?
Well, there's a whole thing because we didn't. It's not totally populated with pictures, and people are
They're upset they're not represented in the
Yes,
slideshow.
they're upset. But I think. What do you think about it? We invite everybody to go look
I
at
mean,
it.
I like it. Yeah, it's nice. And I mean, as far as the slideshow is concerned, I'm in one picture, but I didn't send in any pictures. But I don't expect to be well represented in the slideshow because I'm not well represented on the schedule. But
Brother, but you're in the slideshow.
but I'm in the slideshow. I think Zach Zimmerman is here. Is Zach here, Cole? Yeah, it's a nice website. But it's not intended for me. It's intended for the customers.
Right.
Oh
you
my
know.
God,
So,
Gary!
Again, if it enhances their experience, then that's really the most important thing.
Well, don't you think it's much better? I think it's great.
Yeah, I think it enhances the.
I think it's
you
great.
know, I think the customers will enjoy seeing all the pictures of all the celebrities and all the comics that are on the slideshow. That's the best part of it, really, right? I mean, that's the. Everything else is a little bit cleaner, a little bit more slick, but
Yeah, I think it presents the Comedy Cellar in a way. First of all, the websites of the other clubs are so terrible. They just have. Can you bring up? I guess I shouldn't do that. But
well, you already started doing it. You might as well go all the way.
no. But if you go to the websites of the other clubs, not that I think it matters. They're very like strip mall template. If anybody knows about web designing, you can just download templates. They're like content management templates, and you fill up. But
I think it's great.
the Cellar website, as we're doing it, is replete and filled with like a lot of candid shots. People that you wouldn't expect, like Jim Norton hanging out with Robin Williams and Billy Crystal, and people having fun. Just like there's a lot of stage shot, but it's more off-stage shots. There's John Lasseter.
That was great.
Yeah, we'll be back. So now the slideshow is not ready yet. Aside from what I'm talking about, they're supposed to allow me to have parameters. So, for instance, when there's group shots like that one, I want to linger on them a little bit longer to give people a chance to identify who's in the shot.
It's great.
It's a good idea.
And I also want to add little snatches of video that I have from like 90s VHS video. So it's not quite where I want it to be yet. I just got so fed up waiting that I just that's my daughter with Kevin Hart. It's like Dave Chappelle, Ray Romano. There's Dan Naturman. There's Liz pouring alcohol into Ari Shaffir. Like, who is that?
Taylor Tomlinson. That's great.
Charming Rich Voss. There's Jay McBride. So it's me and John Mayer playing guitar. There's Louis. So anyway, I just think it really presents the Comedy Cellar as like the community that it is. That was really the intention. So I don't know. So go ahead, introduce.
Anyway, so speaking of, we talked a little bit earlier, Zachary, you were in here about literature, the benefits of literature, and why we make students read books. Not that reading books isn't fun, but why is it?
No, it's
but why do we make
Reading's
kids
hard.
do it? And we discussed that. And anyway,
What was the thesis?
well, I said, reading is all fine and good, but why is it a topic in school any more than watching documentaries or, But the conclusion is that reading can introduce you to different times and places in history. If it's a historical book, it can teach you vocabulary, of course. And
teach you curiosity.
And,
I don't
maybe.
think it teaches you curiosity. Maybe.
I think it does, and I think it teaches you empathy.
And if you want to be a writer, it helps you become a good writer.
They do say people who read novels are more empathetic, and I think that's been shown.
It may
like,
well
in
be. Well,
studies.
this is not a novel,
but cause effect is hard to.
True.
So,
I think they promote deep thought. Like you can learn a lot from a documentary, any sort of one-way communication where you're just passively consuming it. Doesn't require as much of you. But when you're reading a book, you have to be more
It may well
active.
be that reading book is good for your brain in terms of its exercise. So we've talked a lot about in this show about Alzheimer's and how to keep it at bay, because some of us are north of 50. But in any case, or even north of 60. But in any case,
I'll remind you of your jokes if it.
thank you very much.
that.
So I don't know. They say learning a second language is good for your brain. I don't know if reading is in general.
I'm
good for
sure
your
it
brain.
must be.
Anyway, but Zach Zimmerman has himself written a book. It's not a novel, but it is a book. It is a memoir. Is it hot in here, or am I suffering for all eternity for the sins I committed on earth? A quick but dense read, coming in at 148 pages.
Clean 148.
So
Get them in and out.
It's a quick read.
It caused some initially the page length caused some drama because in my mind I was like, a book is 200 words. It has to be, or 200 pages. It has to be 200 pages.
Right.
And the publisher was like, we can make it 200 pages. And then they made it 200 pages and they printed it and it looks like large print font for like people who have difficulty reading.
Well,
So they
some
redesigned
people
it.
enjoy a quicker read.
And take your time. There, it jumps all over.
Look, The Old Man in the Sea, I think, is about this long.
shorter, I think. No?
Considered one of the great works of literature.
It's a short story.
And people are saying that about
that
my book. Actually,
that
that it
novels are
is
getting longer.
like
In
Old
the
Man
old
in the
days, people wrote. The Great Gatsby was like 200 pages. And I think Of Mice and Men was pretty short. But nowadays, people, I just like the sizes of soda. So too the side. Well,
I love a little
novel,
tiny
getting
soda.
novel. Anyhow,
healthier
is
for
it
you.
hot in here? Am I suffering all eternity for the sins I committed on earth? I don't know the answer to that question either, and I've asked myself that in not so many words. But welcome, Zach, new author, and
Do you know what the word Cavil means?
Cavil. Cavil. Is that like a Mediterranean restaurant?
is it like something
like
like
a fast casual?
Is it? Well, I know that in French, en cavale means you're on the loose. You're
Like
you're
cavalier, right?
Well, I don't know if that's where it comes from, but
Is that what you meant?
you're fleeing. You're
Sounds a little
you're,
like cobble.
You're
which
on the
is like a
loose. You're
secret
you know
group.
you're like a
No, isn't it-
a
isn't it-
fugitive?
So I'm gonna tell
Isn't it to make like, but sort of like petty objections?
She looked it up. She didn't even have the enough reputation to even for a minute. Yeah. So this is an example of a word. I read it yesterday. It came to me, and it says he ignored their cavilling. I guess I don't know. It makes petty or unnecessary objections. They cavilled at the. Now that is a good word.
Cavil.
That's a good word to describe something that you do put up with. We're talking about why would somebody use a fancy word and why do I like, because that's exactly the right word.
Oh, you like a fancy word.
But
I like
again,
it when
exactly the right
He
word
likes
is
the
only
precise
only
word.
any good if people understand it.
That's Dan's point. Is good. Nobody's gonna know what that means except for me.
Right. So I might have to, depending on my audience, I'll have to explain it to them. But the point is that there are big words, there's another word
That
which
does the
is
same
just
thing,
as
like
good. You
germane.
can just use it, like bespoke when you can say custom made. That annoys me.
What
There's
about
a-
germane? Is there any need for germane when we can say relevant or pertinent?
I don't know. Jermaine might have a different context. I'd have to think about that. But anyway, but the word cavil, like stop your petty and unnecessary complaints. Like it's a good word. And so if I'm reading it in a novel, and then I look it up and I realize at that point I'm saying, no, I appreciate him using the right word, and I'm getting better by reading it. And there's always this little trade-off. But I don't find it to be pretentious when I realize that actually the word is perfect. That's all.
There's
Can
a
I see
guy
the book?
going on to
Well,
Wikipedia.
anyway, let's talk about Zach's book.
No, I want to talk about this TikTok I saw.
Now you went to
yesterday.
an Ivy League school.
Princeton.
He went to Princeton.
Zach,
guy.
by the way,
The most non-Jewish of all the.
We had a Center for Jewish Life.
Yeah, I know, but nobody attends.
Oh,
by the way, Zach and Periel have the same color nail polish, both black.
oh yes.
We
We're
also
in
have the
mourning.
same literary agent.
I
We
sent
learned that
Jamie.
yesterday. He wants to know where your proposal is.
So
It's on a plane.
you have a clip recently on Instagram. I forget the joke now. It was really funny though. Do you remember what it
Kind.
was?
I mean, I post all the time. Give me some.
No,
idea.
that we posted it, or we're about to post it. We clipped it for you. I'm sure we wouldn't do it without you knowing about it.
Then it hasn't happened yet.
So anyway, I guess he sent it to me first to approve it, and they're gonna send it to you.
Oh, okay.
It was really funny, and I sent it to Jamie Kirchick because he's the one who recommended you here, the writer.
Yes, Jamie. Yes. Oh my goodness. Yes,
Yeah.
yes. New book out, or relatively new.
Yeah, the Secret City about gay
Yep,
Washington.
yeah. I've been here 2 years. Is that crazy?
That's crazy.
It'll be 2 years in June.
So he says he wants like royalties for your.
Royalty.
Ah,
I'll look, while you look, I'm going to look up the clip. So go. Actually, can I say? Go ahead. So
Joyce
tell us about
Carol,
the book. Tell us about the book.
Carol Oates says a quote warmly engaging memoir in the guise of stand-up comedy, a bittersweet sort of humor, droll and self-aware, painfully yet funnily candid, a voice of disarming
Look,
frankness
I don't read
and
blurbs. I don't read
intimacy.
blurbs. I don't read blurbs. Stop with your blurbs.
Can I see that? Joyce Carol Oates wrote you
I
a
don't read
blurb?
blurbs. Blurbs are.
Joyce wrote my blurb.
Was she a professor at Princeton or
She
something?
taught me in a class at Princeton.
But everybody knows that those blurbs.
Finally, that degree paid off.
Everybody knows those blurbs are bullshit.
No, that's not true. You need blurbs. That's
Yeah,
one
you
of
need
the
blurb, and
first-
the publisher says, "Look,
it's
give me a
sort of
blurb."
a pyramid.
First of all,
scheme.
You need blurbs.
You're dismissed.
I know. I'm sorry. I connected the dots too late. I had no idea.
What?
Okay.
The first, I was one.
What?
He had my lit agent. He's his lit agent, so it was all kind
So
of.
I do want to hear about Hell Hath No Fury, like an ex-Bible belter turned New Yorker, and I want to get into this with you. But his first blurb is by one of the few people who are really persona non grata at the Comedy Cellar.
Uh-oh.
He might be the only person. I don't know if I can think of. I don't know if I can think about anybody else. There's really
When my bookings dipped a little, I was like, "Is this because?"
It says
Who?
a charming, funny, resoundingly queer collection of bite-sized stories that go down
Oh,
smooth.
is this Branham?
It's a
Branham?
perfect summer read. You'll fall in love with Zach. Guy Branum.
Back to falling in love with me. I think that's really the headline here.
Now, Guy Branum is the guy who wrote. Is he a friend of yours?
We're like Twitter mutuals, and we have the same lit agent.
Right, I heard that.
By the way,
well,
Zach-
you don't have to co-sign this, but Guy Branum is the guy who wrote this article in Vulture magazine where he accused the Cellar of being anti-gay and anti-women, although he had never actually been to the Cellar before. And
I think he was confusing the store and the cellar.
he was
No,
not.
it was not.
No.
And he said and it's the men's club that covered for Louis. I mean, it was just untrue and spurious accusation.
No, I'm
after,
proud of himself.
after accusation. Now, to his
This
credit,
isn't cavil. This is
his
spurious.
cavilling, yeah. So to his credit, I will say he did come, because I threatened to sue. He came in and did do our podcast.
He did?
Yes, he did, and he got. I mean, he took a beating, but to his, and everybody should check it out online. It's one of our best.
Where
podcasts.
was I?
It was before your time.
Oh.
But he then at the end, I offered to let him go on stage in the Cellar, and he wouldn't go.
Oh,
And then it gets worse.
that's an honor to be asked to.
Then when because you don't know me very well, but I'm actually a kind of person who likes to put fights behind me and offer olive branches. And when we had our and I felt like he didn't know, whatever. So when we had our TV show this week at the Comedy Cellar, where it was we had political comedy, I asked the producers to contact Guy Branum
Oh, that's
to
nice.
see if he would like to do the show because it was perfect for him. And actually, I had checked out his stand-up, and he's funny.
Oh, very.
Yeah, and and he wouldn't do it. And I thought that was small of him, and I felt like he'd rather be able to hold on to this bullshit story he's created about the club than to have to kind of admit, oh, actually, they're all right. I did their show, and a lot of people they don't want to give up their thing. So, but anyway, he is funny.
Why did he agree to come on the podcast then?
Well, I don't know that this is the reason he agreed. But I will tell you, I sent him a podcast. I sent him a thing asking him threatening to sue Vulture and asking him to come on the podcast. and then he wrote back, "Will you agree not to sue if I come on?"
Hey, that's powerful.
By the
I'm
way,
pretty sure I got that right.
I would like to preface before we get into the book that,
Yeah.
Zach Zimmerman, it just dawned on me, has a sound-alike that works here at the Comedy Cellar. Josh,
My voice?
yes, Josh Johnson. And you have the
Oh.
exact same voice.
Josh Johnson.
Yes,
correct.
there's something very similar. Yeah,
Really? That's-
I
definitely
would-
tonally low.
or I think
I-
today I'm a little lower.
If we can maybe,
the speed and tonal range.
if we can,
I can go up here too, you guys, if we really want to get to the bottom of
He
this.
really didn't get up high, right?
If you
but he
wanna-
has a little bit of a New Orleans.
if you want to
twang
play a
to him.
clip, play
He
a
is from
clip.
the
If
South,
not,
too.
listeners can look it up. But that's your your vocal doppelganger. Yeah,
Okay,
vocal
so you were
doppelganger.
let's start from the beginning. So you were born where in the Bible Belt?
I grew up in, I guess, technically Bible Belt, I guess, Southern Virginia, Roanoke, Virginia, this little valley surrounded by mountains.
And this was a religious home.
Religious. Dad was a pastor, assistant pastor, and raised me to believe I was going to hell for most of my childhood.
So let
That
me
is
let me stop here. This
awful.
is an interesting question. So in a religious home,
Yep.
how sincere is it? Like how much hypocrisy goes on in a religious home? Is there really is it a legit goodness at heart that guides a religious home? Tell us about that.
Well,
I think
we can only talk about his home.
what's funny now, I think my parents don't really go to church, which I think is so funny. They're like so religious, but they just like, they practice their religion watching YouTube videos and reading the Bible on their own. I'm like, but you're not part of a community. That's like the best part of a church, like knowing people, going to a barbecue. And so I as a kid wasn't maybe as tuned into like, well, you said this and you said that, finding the hypocrisy. Now I can start to see a little bit of it. But they were pretty like earnest in everything they believed.
That's a
Like,
good word. They're earnest.
oh, 1,000%, and believed literal every word of the Bible in their interpretation, and were eager to share it with me so that I didn't burn in hell for all eternity.
I mean, everybody finds himself being a hypocrite at one time or another, but that's different from being a knowing hypocrite, like one
Right.
of these Jimmy Swaggart types who's cheating people, right?
Right.
And I think a lot of non-religious people assume that that's where all these people are, but I have suspected that's not the case. These are just the crooks. Like there's crooks in every community.
Right. Yeah, I don't think my dad or parents were trying to cheat anyone out of anything. If anything, they were trying to like save my life. Like it was out of genuine love that they believe these things and they want to pass them on to like their
By
kid.
traumatizing.
All right, well, a couple more questions. Now, a lot of these people, especially the Southern Bible types, are associated with racism. But racism, at least by the way Christianity is interpreted today, this is anathema to the teachings of the Bible, racism. So what's your insight? Are these people generally more racist than others, or are they more loving their fellow man than others?
Religious or Christians?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. I think politically sometimes people stir up animosity and point it towards different groups over time. So I think hatred's been directed towards black people or towards other folks to distract people from, hey, you're poor and you're suffering and we can't do anything from you. But that mixes the religious and the political, I think, a fair amount.
Because when it came to like Jews, for instance, like in my father's generation, Christians were the most vehement anti-Semites. But there really is a change. It's not the way it is now. It's the church seems to have really sincerely changed its view about that.
Yeah.
It seems to me when I read about it, I remember when I was looking into Mel Gibson had that movie, The Passion of the Christ, which was based on this really anti-Semitic book by the Dolores. I don't remember, but anyway, I just remember doing a lot of reading about it at the time, and coming to the conclusion, my goodness, these Christian people really don't feel that way. Like they really didn't read it as anti-Semitic, and they really didn't want it to be anti-Semitic. They really seem to have internalized the kind of change from the top.
Well, the question is telling somebody, whether they be Jewish, whether they be gay, that if you don't change your ways, you're going to hell, so you better change your ways. Is that hateful, or are they trying to help?
It can be both.
Oh, yeah. Did your family believe that you had to be baptized to go to heaven?
Oh, yeah. All Catholics go to hell.
So
in our book.
And Jews.
And Jews, yeah, sorry.
Okay, so does that, so...
Hell was very well populated.
And what is hell? What is hell exactly?
Wait. So what is that? So this is interesting. Like, how can you feel that Jews are going to hell, but also love Jews, or like what's the complexity?
You're trying to help them not go to hell.
Right. They would say love the sinner, hate the sin.
Oh.
But they're not even sinners because it's not their fault they're not baptized, right?
It is, I guess you're punished as an individual, even though it is the sin of Adam that's been passed down that like condemns you to hell for all eternity.
No,
we're like the dreamers. We're brought here like the dreamers are the immigrants who were brought by their parents and now they're illegal. That's us. We're the dreamer religion.
What is interesting? My parents.
Well, you can convert.
You have to tell me where this comes from, but my dad was very big on. Like, God's been good to America because America defends Israel. At the same time thinking all Jewish people go to hell. But he was very pro-Israel in that way.
Right, because Jerusalem's also holy to
Yeah.
Christianity. You're going to get mad at me for saying this. I don't is there at no point that somebody's like, guys, this is like nonsense made up, like cockamamie?
If I had any courage as a kid, I would have said
Well,
that.
what was your take? You
look at Noam.
I ate it all up.
You
It's
knew you were gay
horrible.
from a young age.
I actually didn't experience like queer desire till college.
Oh, really?
I don't know
okay.
if it was like super
So at
buried,
that
but-
point, did your parents say, "Look"?
It was, Zach.
Whoa, let's back up. You didn't experience. You said queer desire.
Queer desire.
Is that
longing.
the term of art now? Queer.
Or whatever. Maybe there weren't hot guys in Virginia, but it wasn't until like college with the beach volleyball boys with their shirts off. I was like, wow.
If you would like, forgive me, so let's say you were masturbating at 14. What were you thinking about?
15, 16.
15. You thinking about women, men,
Women. Yeah.
It took him so much longer to come, though.
The first time I came was inside a woman.
I will be done.
So, no, first time you came.
Yeah, no masturbate. I didn't really know what masturbating
Would you
was.
qualify yourself as bisexual then?
I'm leaning there a little these days.
How did you not masturbate?
I just didn't know.
It's a sin.
I got an erection and I was like, oh, that's kind of fun.
You just found somebody to put it in?
This is fascinating. I always assume that you always know what you're attracted to. I used to get an erection. I watched Star Trek and Hot Aliens.
Which one?
Oh,
you're into alien stuff?
And I didn't even understand why.
Wow.
I didn't understand why.
Noam's attracted to
Some
aliens.
people are into that. Okay, this is your shocker. This is
That,
Well,
you
maybe
watch
he
Star
was-
Trek,
a little bit.
Maybe he was.
That got you going.
He still does today. That music.
Maybe he was suppressing it because
Yeah.
he knew
Right,
that
that's
it
the thing.
wasn't
That-
what
yeah.
it's
It's
supposed to be
impossible to
doing.
know. And I'm like, how much was buried? Because when parents don't support or encourage, you want their approval. And so the desire has to, like, I don't know, you have to really want their accept. What you feel has to be bigger than you
Well,
want.
were you aware as a kid that Christianity, according
yeah.
to that interpretation, was anti-gay?
Yes, they told me homosexuality is a sin over and over and over and over and over again. And I didn't know any queer people as a kid.
But your parents must have known you were a little zesty.
I've asked. Wait, zesty is actually the word TikTokers use.
Yeah,
to
yeah, so I got
describe-
it.
That's incredible. I've asked. I went home. I was like, Mom, was I into like feminine stuff? She's like, no.
My 11-year-old daughter told me that she said I have a 6-year-old. She said, Daddy, I think Benny's a little zesty.
Oh, you're plugged into, is 11 Gen Z? Or is that even a further
And
generation?
she's Gen.
Well, I've never heard zesty as a word.
It's a great word. I, said,
Oh.
"That's
I know. I've heard it to describe like tortilla shit, like hot and
Doritos.
zesty.
zesty. You know, like-
It
Zesty.
means, I think it means gay, right? Or like a
She
little.
meant she meant
Yeah,
it was
yeah.
gay.
How
Well,
many
zesty.
siblings do you have?
Zesty to me
There's
is.
3 of us.
Let's not all bombard him with questions. Let's keep a nice, coherent through line.
Yeah, yeah. Stop asking me interesting questions about my life and let's talk about the definition of zesty.
Oh, we're done with the
I
definition
like
of
you.
zesty.
Oh, we've moved on.
Well, Periel's. We have to keep it. We have to keep it coherent
Wow.
and
Silencing women on the podcast. Dan Naturman.
Come on, continue your mansplaining, Dan. Go ahead.
well, it's not a matter of siding. You know, Periel and I have a podcast that we do together, and she is free to guide the conversation on that podcast. But here, she's actually technically just a producer.
I have an older sister, younger brother, younger sister.
So when you knew you were gay in college, and you knew that you were going, did you believe you were going to hell, and you didn't care because it was just too strong an urge?
Freshman years when I stopped believing in God.
Conveniently, when you started believing.
Conveniently.
When you
It did all it took was kind of like a year away from my family to kind of like start to come into who I am in lots of different ways. And I like lost a friend of mine and feel like that shocking.
Stop
Right.
believing in God as opposed to just abandoning that particular religion.
Right. I was like, the whole thing.
Yeah.
Let's throw it away. But then I majored in religion. I was like, oh, I'm actually interested in studying what other people believe. So I got into Buddhism. I took, I majored in religion. And I'm still curious to this day about how people make meaning in their lives, whether it's in organized supernatural beliefs or.
I'm with you. There's no. You believe in God at all?
We've had this discussion.
I don't
Why are you asking
remember.
me questions to which you know the answer? You know I don't
Because
believe
the
in God.
listeners might.
Well, you could say, Dan, you
Again,
don't believe-
nobody cares.
No, you could say, Dan, you're an agnostic or an atheist. I'm probably an atheist.
Well, that's
except,
what I'm asking. Which one are you?
well, I mean, atheist. Does that mean you have to 100% not even consider the possibility of a God?
Yes.
What's more likely, that these UFOs are real or God is real? The UFOs that have been in the news lately.
They're both equally as unlikely. But I
that-
mean, I guess there's a.
If Trump knew about UFOs, we would have all heard about
I mean,
UFOs.
Yes.
I
So that
can't
makes
bring
me think
myself
there's
to
nothing
say
going
that
on.
absolutely without question there's no God.
Then you're agnostic.
But I think the word I'm not sure that the word atheist is used that strictly. I think if you're 99.99999% sure there's no God, that's
That's what you are?
more or less atheist.
We need a new word.
Yeah. And what are you?
I believe that something exists
yeah, we just
for sure.
I'm with Zach. I think it's. I would stake anything on it that does not exist.
That's nothing.
I think it's possible we come that our consciousness comes back in some other form.
And why do you think that?
I think that only because I know for sure that I came into existence once. It happened. So I can't rule out that it could happen again in the infiniteness of time and space.
An octopus is conscious. A dog.
Well, I don't know
dog
that.
is
Well, I might come back as an octopus or a dog,
Do they get you going?
assuming they're self-aware.
What's that?
Do octopuses get you going?
Get me going?
Yeah, it's kind of alien like.
All those hands.
How is hell described? You talk about fire. Like the cover of the book is "You're on fire." So is hell described as fire?
Hell is separation from God. You are away from God. And yeah, so there is the burning. My dad would tell me this, the burning and gnashing of teeth. And then he would act it out. He'd be like,
Is that sufficiently scary?
so much pain
to
that you're.
deter you?
When you're a kid,
Oh, yeah.
You know what would be scary to me? They tell you hell is an eternity. You have food poisoning, and you're in the middle seat on Spirit Airlines
No free refill.
with food poisoning. Can you imagine that horror? An eternity, you're stuck in, and it's turbulent. Because I've experienced food poisoning.
On
So
a plane?
Not in a plane,
Oh,
God
Lord.
forbid.
A turbulent flight will make you believe
But
in
a
God, though.
turbulent flight
That's true.
with
That's
food
true.
poisoning and the cart is in there. You can't even get to the bathroom and you're bouncing up and down and you see. I've experienced food poisoning on a Greyhound bus, so
That's what got you there 10 minutes faster.
I've never been burned, so it doesn't really resonate with me.
I see.
Okay, I would like to request some leeway here.
Can we continue so you go off to college
Yep.
and
I'm just saying something. Sorry to nothing I can do. You know.
and
Oh, what?
and you go off to college
Why are mom and dad fighting?
thinking that you
Maybe
are
your mom.
a straight dude, and then something happens when you realize I'm to use your word, queer, or to use my daughter's word, zesty.
Zesty.
So what was that? You must
It
remember
was
it.
very gradual. I
Oh, it was
started to. I mean, I hooked up with. I got a blowjob my freshman year. I gave a blowjob.
but how did that
sophomore
happen?
Year. It wasn't
It's a big step. You're drinking.
Yeah, I was pretty drunk. Probably too drunk to like do it, but it happened, and I got a blowjob, and I was like, "Oh, that's interesting."
It's better from a man, I've heard.
Bet men give better head.
Yeah.
Well, why only hear it now? Find out. I hear aliens give. An alien will eat your ass out like none other.
Well, so will a lot of comedians.
But then, but then by senior year, I'd been on like dates with men. But it's still even. I mean, Princeton's not a super like welcoming environment for queer people. Even there's a non-binary guy who just graduated who's like, yeah, it's like still really toxic because you're getting people that are 18 coming from all across the country. It's not the most liberal place. I mean, it is liberal in a lot of ways, but I got called like a faggot my senior year
By a
like another
Princetonian?
dude. Yeah.
Can you imagine somebody that goes to Princeton?
Call in anger, like
Yeah, like I was the officer of a eating club, and I was like, "Oh, we're closing up for the day," and he was like, he was drunk too, and being like, "Oh, a faggot in Tower, I can't believe that," because Tower's the eating club that was like artsy and political.
That is shocking.
And then, like a narc, I turned him in. I went to the I went to the LGBTQ center. Hello, and I wasn't out at the time, so I was like, "This person called me a faggot, and I want to just file a report that happened." I think he just got like a slap on the wrist or whatever.
slap on the wrist.
Yeah.
Is that traumatic to be called a
No, I think I'm pretty used to it. I haven't been called one in a while, and I am one. It's some of my favorite jokes are when I call myself one. It's like funny and provocative, and it's one of the few words I can say.
If you use the word queer, that is not the same as being gay, I gather. There's a reason you have another word, right?
It can morph and change. I think people have been reclaiming queer because it used to be a slur, and then queer also has an element of like activism and politics associated with it. I think a little bit.
The problem with the word, this was a little bit there, but just, and younger people will not believe that this is true, but it is true, that it was a word that was, it really depended who was using it and how. So my father would say to me about a new waiter, no, he's a, and it was not in the slightest bit derogatory. As a matter of fact, gay waiters would say to my father, "No, man, he's okay. He's like it was very much."
But it was meant to be humorous, I gather. You don't use that word.
It could be humorous.
I think
but
it's
it
meant
was
to be
definitely not. It was not like the N word.
There's much funnier ways. Lighten the loafers, a little bit of a dandy.
But
you
that,
can think of cuter, funny.
That would be more derogatory than this was, because in the Village anyway, which was always the F word, like it was used pretty casually in conversations between gay and straight people to describe as you would just as you seem to indicate, it's still used to describe like gay people.
Well, that's not a word that I would ever use.
I'm older than you. I'm telling you this.
Okay,
I'm telling you this when
fair
I
enough,
was
fair enough.
This is what it was like when I was a teenager.
Unless I was trying to be funny or flippant or something like that. It's not a word that it's a word that does have a derogatory element.
No,
to it.
it's definitely moved almost to the side of where you can't even use it.
Oh yeah,
At all.
put it in that column.
But
you're canceled for saying it.
It wasn't that way. It really was dependent on the context of who was saying it and how. And by the way, you can say gay and mean it ugly, but anyway, culturally in the Village, it was just you would hear it all the time.
Right,
you just hear it all the time, and without anybody saying, like
Yeah.
you'd hear it all the time. Anyway, that's neither here nor there.
But that is beautiful. How
Well, what
language
about you
changes
say
over
you're
time.
leaning bisexual? Are you a practicing bisexual, or is bisexuality
It's been a minute. I watch a little straight porn,
okay?
but yeah, I haven't hooked up with a woman in a long time.
So it's
I slept with the trans woman in LA. She is a sex worker, but we were just on a date and hooked up. But then I did check her rates the next day to see what kind of a deal I had gotten.
you know,
Is this true or is this a
This is so true. I got
you know,
a great
I know
deal.
you think you're all that.
That was $1,000.
I know you think you're
for
all that,
free,
but I had
for
a
free.
I know you think you're
Okay,
cool.
sorry.
I had a sex worker take me to Tavern on the Green for dinner.
Who paid?
The sex worker.
Wow.
Because she was off the clock.
Dan Natterman.
And not only that, but when I went to the bathroom, she said, "Oh, here's some money to tip the bathroom attendant," which we used to have here at the Comedy Cellar, but I haven't seen him.
He didn't come back after COVID. Ali. I hope he's
Okay.
all right.
Nice
I
guy.
tried to contact.
No,
But
there was somebody in the underground. I got past post-COVID. There's been somebody.
There has been somebody. I haven't seen anybody when I was there.
and then I had a girl I met on Matchmaker, which is a website that doesn't even exist anymore. And you
that
know,
Jewish?
we went on a couple of no, it's
Matchmaker,
regular,
Matchmaker?
no,
No.
just a regular web dating site. And then like she started like, you know, it was regular date, and then she started like hinting that, you know, I could buy her some things, and you know, hey, could you buy me some stuff? And she was a sex worker, but
Did you buy her anything?
no, I gave her
You sure it
some,
wasn't Jewish?
I gave her some money in exchange for sexual favors.
I once sent someone, we were just flirting, and his Venmo account was in his profile, so I sent him $5 on his birthday as like a little playful gift. But then I was like, is this how you become a sugar daddy? Is this like the beginning of it? And
don't
then
think
I told Mike Rowland, and he's like, you're not a sugar daddy. You're that boy's uncle. Like that $5, that's nothing.
Well, Zach Zimmerman-
I want to hear the story. So that you had a date with a trans woman. So
Mm-hmm.
and I mean, this is just interesting to me. You know, I'm presuming this is somebody who still had the male equipment.
Yeah.
That's the best part.
And
Is it, Dan?
Well, I mean, if you're going to go in that direction, you know, that just adds a little something different.
Little
If
spice.
if you're into that, then
now when you're having sex with a because Periel and I have argued with this, like at Thanksgiving dinners. when you are having
Turkey
sex,
ready? Well, who's the top and who's the bottom? When you're fucking...
when you are having sex with a trans woman, do you feel like you're having gay sex or straight sex?
Oh, that's interesting. I mean, I treat her as a woman, so I guess it would be
Well,
straight.
yeah, but there's a penis.
But
involved.
I'm gay, so I feel like everything I do is a little gay.
But there's a penis involved.
Right. Oh, I see. Well, right. But they're a woman, so it's straight.
Thank you.
That makes me a little bi.
I don't know if there's a definitive answer to that question.
Well, my answer
Our
is exactly
nation's
the
mine.
opposite.
Your answer is you come down on the side of it's an absolutely gay thing to do.
Well, that's you're putting it in my mouth.
Well,
there, but my attitude with Periel is this is what it started. She denies it now, but she did say to me that at one time that if you won't have sex with a trans woman, you're a bigot. And I'm like, no, I'm attracted to the female body. As a matter of fact, I don't care what she's thinking about. Like in other words, she could be having the best gay sex of her life. Like I'm
with you?
yeah, like if she thinks if she's psychologically a male, it's irrelevant to me. If when she takes her clothes off, this is a female body, that's what I'm attracted to. And if it's a male body, it doesn't matter to me that they identify as a man or woman. That's within their own mind.
A phrase she taught me that helped me was the idea of genital preference. Like you can have a preference. You can prefer.
you can.
Well, that's exactly what I'm saying.
You can
yeah.
prefer penises.
You can prefer anything you want. You can prefer Asian women, black women. You know all.
This is the whole.
You
point.
have a right to.
You can prefer tall
You have a right to prefer
to your
anything
left.
you want. Zach,
aliens.
I tell you, Zach is adorable.
You like a man with a sense of humor.
And
Yeah.
were I inclined in that
Here's
direction,
some money for the bathroom attendant.
I would.
I'll meet you in there. In a
Zach
little
would be if I were inclined in that way. Zach he's adorable. There's no question.
adorable.
But yet,
Don't you think, Nicole?
we have people like Jim Norton, who
Nicole?
and he talks about online, who has a trans wife or girlfriend, I don't know,
Right.
who does not identify himself as gay, and I know for a fact he's attracted to women. So there's something about this I don't understand. But me personally,
Right, but
I care not to be called a bigot because I'm not a bigot.
I don't.
But
think
I'm attracted
I ever
to
said that.
female bodies, and I don't think it's relevant what somebody's thinking to me.
Right, and as I've tried to
Explain.
a trans woman's body is a woman's body. You're saying you're focusing.
I have general preference. Okay,
Okay,
that's
fine.
the
That
new
I-
thing.
I feel that honestly, as a friend, it helped me a lot.
You,
'cause
you
this
as
is
I
so
said,
hard.
you have
Same
a right.
thing.
You have a right
Right.
to have any preference you want.
Of course you do.
Right? If
No, but if you say I don't want to, you at some point you say, listen, I don't find black women attractive.
you have that right.
Right, you have that right, but it sounds bigoted.
I wouldn't lead with
It
that.
it does sound big, and I would never admit it if it were the case with me. But Candace Owen gets me going. I'll tell you that.
So I have an older sister and a younger brother.
And and are either one of them gay?
No,
No.
so far just me.
And to
So far.
one of the interesting things is
Everyone's failed my parents in some sort of way.
Oh, really?
My older sister got divorced. I'm gay. My younger sister likes black guys, and my younger brother is like,
Oh, well, hold on.
kind
Your
of
younger
just a
sister likes
failure.
black guys. Now, why is that? Why is that?
in my parents' eyes, that.
But why?
Not like.
Because I asked you that before.
No, it is interesting. I don't think they would say it outright, but they're a little racist. My parents,
that'll be
but
the
is it-
title of your next book, A Little Racist.
a little racist.
But do they find that their religion makes them more uncomfortable about their feelings, racist feelings, or less uncomfortable?
I would hope so, because it's religion of
So
love, and
so they feel
everyone.
they're failing their religion
Yeah.
by feeling these racist feelings.
I would think so.
I mean, there are those that obviously slave owners. Many of them were Christians, and they
Oh, right, the
they
Bible's a
figured out a
weapon
way to
for
get
both
around
sides.
that. The Bible says slavery's okay, and well, God put the white people over here and the black people over there, so maybe he doesn't want them to mix. I'm sure they can figure out a way to justify it in terms of their religion.
Yeah, the
what-
Bible was used to condemn slavery and support it. It's like such a powerful document because it has such a history, and you can invoke it in any direction you want. You can condemn homosexuality with it. You can condemn homophobes with it. It's
But
like,
your mom's really come around, right?
yeah, I think over time, once they realize, like, oh, you might lose me if you don't love me more.
But do you think they still believe you're going to hell?
Yeah, we just don't talk about it.
I mean, but that's a pretty big deal. If I thought,
I know.
you know,
I know they should be like
if
yelling
I
down
thought,
the door.
if I legitimately and sincerely thought that my child was going to hell,
It'd be all you could talk about.
I'd have to say, look, what can I say? God doesn't like gays. I don't agree with him, but that's kind of his position.
A verse my mom comes
know.
back to is raise them up in the way they should be, and when they're old, they won't depart from you. So they think I'm going to, like, on my own come back around. They tried the hard line strategy of, like, condemning and repeating it over and
Well,
over
according to
again.
Christian doctrine, what do you need to do to get back into heaven? Just simply say, stop doing, like if at 90 years old,
on
you
my
had
deathbed, say, I accept Jesus
so
Christ
you
my
could have
personal
all
Lord
the
and Savior.
dick you want.
If you really believe it, though.
So just tell them you'll do that.
That's what's the mind fuck. As a kid, I was doing it, but I didn't hear the voice of God. Something my
The
dad
problem is you
heard,
get hit by a
so-
car and you die
Oh,
instantly.
I know. I need a notice. I need.
Yeah, if
20-second
you know you're going to
notice.
die, so you
I need a light before I.
you
die.
have to. It has to be sincere. You have to say, "I'm sorry," and it has to be sincere. You can just kind of meld the words.
God
according-
knows you have to really, really believe it.
Oh, that's the tricky part. That's it. I thought just saying the words and maybe a prayer and a Hail
Oh,
Mary.
abracadabra. Yeah.
If you say the right words, I thought it was
I
enough.
can't promise that if I'm on a plane that's going down that I'm not gonna, say it a little.
I mean, it is possible.
Just to cover your bases, right?
But you have to believe it.
I know.
Yeah, I
There are
didn't know-
Buddhist traditions where you just prepare for your last breath. Your like whole life you're meditating so that you're in a good state of mind when you die, because that like dictates where you're going to be reborn.
I mean, it
You
is.
just want to be ready and at peace when you take that final breath.
Do you believe? Does the Bible? I know there's one verse that says a man should not lay with a man as with a woman. I guess is that the entirety of what the Bible has to say about homosexuality? I think it's pretty much it.
There's something in like Leviticus. I think that's the main one. And people reinterpret one word to be homosexual when it's actually like sexual immorality or something.
I mean,
You
the
go-
Bible says a lot of things that we
Right,
don't
you're not
take
supposed
to-
literally.
Oh, yeah.
Like
You know,
you're not supposed to like mix
shellfish
like
and-
wool and silk or some.
But
Can't have a cheeseburger.
so it seems to me that the Christian condemnation of homosexuality is based in part on just people's innate prejudice because
Oh yeah.
there's one verse in the Bible, but there's verses that say all sorts of things, and they don't talk about those things.
So much of life is you feel a certain way, and then you try to find some like higher order justification for feeling that way. I do that with like when I'm jealous of someone, I'm like, oh, I hate them, and then I'm like,
They figure out a
well,
reason
actually,
why.
their art is what I don't like. Yeah, they're
Well,
like,
that's the whole breadth of modern discourse. Here's my position, and now I'm going to figure out why it's right. Global warming, man-made global warming is bullshit, and now I'm going to go online and figure out and just read the articles that back up that position.
right. It's
You know.
not a healthy way to get to. The
But that's
truth.
but that's how. I mean, I think on both sides of the aisle, most people.
Well,
you
this
know,
was John Haidt's book was all about.
right? I mean, like I believe man-made global warming is real, but guess what? If tomorrow all the experts said, you know what, we made a mistake. We forgot to carry the one in the equation. And
There's
turns
some
out
reports coming out that COVID came from a lab, and I think
I'm open to all. I'm open to.
So not funny's the wrong word, but it is like such a like, oh my god, like we made it such a political like identity thing. What you believed about where it came from, and then to find out the actual truth.
Well, I had a stupid thought when this
Another one.
Okay, yeah. When this Canadian wildfire smoke was in the air, and you were all here, you could see it. You could see it in the air.
Mm.
And I was thinking that if COVID was just a little bit visible,
1,000%.
if it's just a little COVID haze, that everybody wear their masks. You wouldn't have to convince anybody. Like
100%.
just the slightest fit. Oh, I get
Or if
it.
when you had COVID, you turned a little green or something. You just any
anything,
kind of visual.
anything,
Yeah.
yeah.
People human. That's just proves just how not dumb we are. But like, yeah, we only have our senses, and we're kind of stupid. And so, if an invisible disease is going to get us more than a very visible.
It's so crazy.
was
You would wear
urgent,
your
too.
fucking mask without being asked.
Right,
If you
right.
just saw a little pink in the air. Like,
Yes.
no
And if-
offense.
and
It was
if-
Whatever, call
it was more scary, I think, because of that. I think that's what really
Oh,
made
invisible
it.
was more
Yeah,
scary.
I think the invisible was more scary.
Well, not to the people that thought it was
No,
all
it's also
bullshit.
more deniable.
And the slow creep of climate change makes it a harder villain to
That's-
fight too.
yeah.
It's not like, oh, an alien came down and we can all battle it together at once. It's like, oh, this thing's like slowly chipping away at us. Humans are so
Denial.
We're-
Denial.
our brains have shortcomings, and so we have to build structures that support us and the things we want to do. Because in the moment we make terrible decisions. And so that's why we have hopefully a government that they're debating and putting money towards different things and regulating different industries. Because I wouldn't trust me with like climate change decisions or I read I think it was Sam Harris's an old Sam Harris book, and I identify with a lot of the way he thinks about
Are
it.
you a Sam Harris fan?
I think so. Yeah, I haven't read anything super recently, but like the New Atheists really spoke to me, especially when I was first becoming an atheist.
I didn't read it, but
So you would
I
go as
listened.
far as to call yourself an atheist?
Recently, I'm kind of like, whatever gets you through the day, man.
Now,
You don't
Like-
allow for any possibility in your mind of
there's something.
something.
I think something I do. I think the universe, God is the dead name of the universe. A lot of people are like surrender to the universe now, and I do think there is an element of kind of like there's power in surrendering. Like things work out to good.
it sounds
It's
to me
not-
like Buddhism has had an effect on you. You seem to
Yeah.
be tending towards Buddhism.
I do love. I mean, he taught some great stuff, and meditation's pretty powerful.
Do
And
you meditate?
not as much as I should, but when I do, I always feel goddamn amazing.
I don't like meditation. It lets all the bad thoughts in. Because meditation is by nature, you kind of you don't don't think of anything. You're not distracted.
What
You're
do you
not doing
do when you think the bad thought?
I have to go back to what distraction. But
Your
yeah,
breath. You go to your breath.
watching TV or reading a book or something else. But
No,
just
you're supposed to
being
let
alone
them
with
pass.
being alone with my thoughts.
You just let it pass. What is a mind fuck to me about consciousness is like it's such a bad deal. Someone once was like, okay, hey, do you want the ability to imagine incredible futures, no language, communicate at levels you've never known? But there's going to be a little voice in your ear being like, you're a piece of shit. You're a fucking piece of shit. Fucking loser. For the rest of your life. Like, why do we all have that weird little negative talk track in our heads saying terrible things to us all the time?
I don't have that.
Yeah?
I don't. I
By
don't.
the way, is
I don't-
Nicole here? Or
I
did
don't
she leave?
think
You're never
so.
mean to
She's
yourself?
sleeping. Well, I mean,
You're
I have.
never like,
I have self
oh,
doubts.
that was
stuff.
dumb. I shouldn't have said that. Or like, oh, I wish I had done this. Or like,
Yeah, of course, but I wouldn't say it's a constant
Drumbeat.
thing. Yeah,
Oh.
I wouldn't describe. I'm not saying.
you're on,
like,
on
I'm
any
not like a-
drugs?
What's that?
You on any drugs?
No.
Have you done ayahuasca? It sounds like that's something you
No,
would
I
enjoy
need
very
to.
much, or psilocybin.
Mike Kaplan did it, and I think it changed who he was.
Well,
I'd be open to
I
it.
hear all sorts of things about those drugs.
Sam Harris is a big fan of them.
That
Psychedelics. No, he is.
Oh, is he? Oh.
Absolutely huge.
and they're coming around to even LSD. I think they're coming around to possible uses of it for mental illness in particular.
There is a theory that eating a psychedelic mushroom is kind of what led to humanity. Like a monkey ate a delicious mushroom, and that's kind of expanded our brains and led to us evolving to this.
That's not true.
It's
Well,
not.
I
I mean,
don't
it might be a
think-
theory, but you know that's not true.
Okay, I don't know. I'm afraid that Satan will appear to me if I ever do psychedelics in a meaningful way.
Did you ever read the Mark Twain's short story, The Mysterious Stranger?
No.
Where Satan comes to him. It's a pretty, you like that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I sit down. There's a piece in here where I sit down with Satan at like a diner and talk.
Oh,
to
really?
him.
Well, that's
Yeah.
kind of like what Mark Twain's story.
Yeah. Oh, that's fun.
And what was Satan like?
He is very charming. He tipped 15% at the diner.
Does he look like Brad Pitt in his 30s?
It was like Al Pacino.
It
in
ends
Devil's
with
Advocate.
like an absurdist line that like he reveals his form and he looks like David Duchovny. I don't know why. I was like, he has to look like that. But I interview him like a magazine piece and ask him about his history and how he got canceled in heaven. And
So this book is memoir, but it's also got sort of
some humor pieces along the
some
way to kind
pieces
of break
that you
it up.
might find in the New Yorker. For
Exactly. I pulled some of my best ones. That's the great thing about writing a book. You can be kind of lazy. You can be like, oh, let me take these couple pieces I already wrote, package them together. But I spent a lot of work on it, and I'm very proud of it. And if anyone wants to read it,
Well,
they should buy it.
Nicole,
It's
is
a
there
huge
any?
accomplishment to write a book.
Can we pull up a
All
clip
three of you have written books. It's amazing.
I know.
Can we pull up a clip of
When's
Josh?
yours? I feel like you could write a
Well-
great book.
I don't think so.
Noam is too. He doesn't have the motivation.
I don't think I have an interesting story to tell.
Well, no, you would
And
write a
I never
nonfiction-
stopped you guys.
You would write a you would write a nonfiction book.
I don't know what I would write.
You would write a book about nonfiction, like a Jonathan Haidt type thing.
I don't think I have an interesting nonfiction story.
That's ridiculous. And also, Noam's a little bit snooty about memoirs, though. He thinks novels are harder to write.
You'd write a novel.
I'd what?
You'd want to write a novel.
No,
No, he's just.
I think they are. Or I think a novel's harder to write.
Of course, a novel is harder to write.
It's
I-
a different. Someone told me.
I'm not disputing that. I'm just saying you're a little bit snooty.
That's
about
not snooty. If Dostoevsky sat down to write his memoir, I think he'd find that easier than writing Crime and Punishment.
Yeah, but you're always like, oh, Periel, you just wrote a memoir.
You
Like
did.
It's not like a real book.
Oh,
It's a real
memoirs are
book,
real.
but it's a
Two,
real
by
book,
the way.
but it's not
Oh,
a.
Now he's saying that because you're here.
No,
you think it's harder to. You think it's harder to imagine a world where anything could happen than it is to create a compelling narrative with actual evidence and things that really happened?
I think that
Because a memoir is not like a diary, right? Like you still have to like create like characters and an arc and a story, and you're still like making stuff up.
There's value in both of them.
yes, yes, there's absolutely value in both of them. You have to have talent to do either. Both are interesting to read,
Okay.
but
Nicole clip
but
this.
like Charles Dickens. I don't know if you've ever read anything by Dickens. He was a famous British author. Charles Dickens creates a whole universe of characters and interplays and stories, and he creates it. He makes the whole thing up.
Okay.
That to me is different than writing about your dumb childhood.
Nicole, is it possible to get a quick clip of Josh Johnson to compare voices?
And then we'll wrap it
Oh,
up.
that's hilarious.
We got to deal with
I don't know if it's
Someone told me once that when
Nicole?
you write a novel, people talk about the craft of what you wrote. When you write a memoir, they talk about what happened to you.
Yeah. Now, of course, obviously there's style in any writing. You can
Right.
write anything. Okay, well, Josh, that's already
Yeah, but I guess he's introducing Josh.
Nicole. That's already right, Nicole.
Here's Josh Johnson, same voice. Listen carefully.
Hey,
He's got a new
cool.
haircut.
I think he starts with so.
Cool. How y'all doing? Everybody good? Sweet. I was having a conversation with my friends about how they missed before the pandemic, and I know by that they mean 2019. But I'll be honest, I miss random years.
All right.
Ah, that's enough.
Okay.
We get
I
the
think he's
idea.
from the South too.
Yeah, as I said, he had
We
a
overlap
little
with each
New Orleans.
But
in it.
this, what I'm doing today, is not my stage persona. I don't think. I'm much more like, hey, everybody.
We got to wrap it up because.
Okay.
But I
Thank
want
you
to
for
ask you
having me.
only because we have another show after this. But I want to ask you a question. Do you have any response to the Jocelyn Chia incident?
Oh, poor girl. Jesus Christ. I only followed a little bit of it. I thought it was interesting. Can I ask you a question about it? I was interested the decision or what the process asking her to take it down was like.
I didn't ask you to take it down.
Oh, there's some article that.
So the New York
that,
Times, I think, said at the request of the Comedy Cellar.
Yeah, and that caught my ear because I was like, Noam's like.
And the New York Times article, I
aggressive,
believe, said that.
free speech advocate.
Oh
So.
no, well maybe I did.
Or maybe somebody else.
No, what happens is they're supposed to I'm gonna tell a story in the next hour or two. They're supposed to run these clips by me before they post them.
Right.
And they didn't run this one by me. And I wouldn't have posted it.
Oh, really? You would have
because-
flagged that.
Because I would have sensed that, because the club is artistic expression, and I'm very reluctant to intervene in what you guys say. Instagram is a promotional thing, and it has to be a smart thing. But it's idiotic to post something you think is going to lead to bad publicity, right? So when I saw this, I said, "Why would you post it?" It actually invites the customers to leave bad reviews. He actually puts the 5 stars up on the goddamn video. Like it's like daring the customer.
Oh.
So I flipped my lid. Not that I could have ever imagined it became what it became.
An international
which actually
incident.
flipped and actually might even be good for the club. But yeah,
Right.
And when I said, "What the fuck?" So I took it down off our Instagram, and then I asked Danny to send her a new version of the clip that was not branded by the Comedy Cellar.
Oh, without teasing you to review.
Yeah. It's still the Comedy Cellar sign.
Gotcha.
And my answer was like, it's her business. I'm not going to tell
But no call to action.
Yeah, no call to action, and no Comedy Cellar logo on our. In other words, this is your clip, Jocelyn. None of my business what you do with your clip. The fact that this is our club, I understand it can still lead to negative response to the club simply because it's obviously the Comedy Cellar because that big sign is behind you.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't feel I had a right to take it that far. Now I said, you're right. It's her performance, and she's free to do with it what she wants. Even if it's bad for me, I got to suck it up. I just asked Danny to give her a clean version, a vanilla version of her own clip, rather than make it
Just
seem
without like the Cellar frame.
But the Comedy Cellar Instagram account is another matter.
Yeah.
That you have every right to.
And you made a good point, too, that something on a stage in a club is different than you drinking your morning coffee and watching. Like, the same joke read on your phone at 9 a.m. can hit different than being, like, in a room at 10 o'clock.
Well,
when you have an idea of the persona of the character, too, like, oh, this is a bad boy. Like, a lot of the comics here have, like, a bad boy persona, and it's, like, tongue-in-cheek a little, and you're not saying
There's an
things
entire
you actually believe.
vibe to and this is not just comedy. I'm going to say, like, in music, sometimes you're in a band, you're playing a song really, really fast. The audience, and then you listen back to it the next day. What the fuck? It's so fast and frantic. But in the moment, it was awesome. If you listen to like some James Brown live recordings, it's fucking breakneck speed. It's nothing like he released the records. But in that time and place, it works. If you listen to a recording of yourself having sex over morning coffee, you're like, what the fuck? Am I out of my mind? But in the moment, is right. And so comedy, you're drinking, it's late night, you say something naughty. Oh, no, you didn't say it. And it's
Well,
it's a guilty pleasure.
That being said, the Malaysians in the crowd were every bit as infuriated.
I don't believe they were every bit as infuriated. They probably didn't like it. But,
No,
right.
they were like sort of. It was like a riff, like it was like back and forth. I don't think they were actually infuriated.
So I'll just give you another example. So like, but this is the vibe of and the culture of comedy. So when my father was, 48 hours from dying, I was at the back table and I told Nick DiPaolo, I said, yeah, I don't think he's going to last another day or two. And Nick says, who gets the Lexus? My father drove a Lexus. And we all burst out laughing because within our kind of world, that's funny.
That's love.
It's love, and within like comedians, that's the way they relate to the world. Everything is a premise in its own way. It doesn't matter how sacred it is. Nothing is sacred because we all and the audience sometimes can be invited into that vibe. As but like as I said in the Times thing, but when you just clip that out and you put it's jarring. And then if you're Malaysian, and this is apparently a very, very sensitive issue for them in a way that we can't understand. But I mean, they have Interpol on the case. You saw this?
Yeah.
So obviously, it is what it is.
But what do you mean in a way that we can't understand? Like, we had September 11th. Like, we can understand that there are horrible events that have killed.
Well, okay, so if we saw a clip of a Malaysian comic making fun of September 11th and it was still close to us, that would be bad enough. But we still do have the cultural understanding that people can say outrageous things. We don't think it's that a crime has been committed,
Right.
you got to call the police. There's certain.
That's
as
interesting.
I've said.
Oh, right. Like, what is there a stand-up culture in Malaysia?
Yeah. So in the Arab world, when they threw a shoe at President Bush, you're old enough to remember this.
Vaguely.
And we learned that showing the bottom of your foot,
Right.
it's like this.
The height of
The
disrespect.
height of disrespect. Like they can't even process it, and that's a Pavlovian response. And Pavlovian responses are real, but we can't really identify it with it. I'm saying they're having some response over there to just the notion of saying something disrespectful. Forget about what's even that. You just don't say things like
Yes.
that. That's like showing the bottom of your foot.
Yes.
That's not our culture.
That's right.
I mean, you don't have a whole fucking country uproar like this. Obviously, we have to look at that and say, you could not recreate that reaction in America, no matter what was said.
That's right.
Right.
You just couldn't
Do
do
we have
that.
any taboo that we could
You
invoke?
just could not get that to happen. So you have to. There's no point in judging that. It is what it is, right? That's all.
Okay.
Although I think Jocelyn certainly knew that she was leaning into something.
Well, that's what we're going to ask her in
Right.
the next hour.
Okay.
You're welcome to hang
is
out.
she on?
She's coming. If you want to hang out.
Oh, yeah, that could be
do we have enough mic? We need to put another mic in.
He can get a
Oh,
mic or he
Pirelli
can sit
doesn't
next to- No.
Probably doesn't need her mic.
No.
That was a,
No,
Okay,
no,
let's
no, you
let's
could
wrap it
put-
up because we got to get
Okay,
set up.
thank you, everybody. Podcast at ComedyCellar.com. Bye-bye.
is it hot in here?
Is it hot in here? Zach Zimmerman, pick it up wherever fine books are sold or the
And
local
bad books.
queer bookstore. Happy to have him here.